So, good morning, and it's the next passage about in the story about Sarai, Abram's wife. Okay, I'll just play a little tune to introduce for fun. The Lord of the Dance that Jesus, maybe he dances now in heaven, and there's a story about King David, who was, a notorious but good king who danced before the Lord, looking very silly. Just to lighten the mood a bit, because I don't want it all to get too serious. How can you learn if you're so serious? So much. Abram's wife Sarai had borne him no children. Now she had an Egyptian slave girl whose name was Hagar, and she said to Abram, "You see that the Lord has not allowed me to bear a child. Take my slave girl, perhaps I shall found a family through her." Abram agreed to what his wife said. So Sarai, Abram's wife, brought her slave girl, Hagar the Egyptian, and gave her to her husband Abram as a wife. When this happened, Abram had been in Canaan or Canaan for 10 years. He lay with Hagar, and she conceived. And when she knew that she was with child, she despised her mistress. That's Sarai, his actual wife. Sarai said to Abram, "I have been wronged, and you must answer for it. It was I who gave my slave girl into your arms, but since she has known that she is with child, she has despised me. May the Lord see justice done between you and me." Because the slave girl is jealous that she's not the real wife, even though she's been given as a wife. So, there's a social thing that now we would say there should have been a formal divorce and then remarrying, but instead of it being, a social thing where someone's a slave and someone's not a slave. Yeah. Abram replied to Sarai, Your slave girl is in your hands. Deal with her as you will." So Sarai ill-treated her, and she ran away. So I think first the slave girl ill-treated Sarai, and then Sarai then ill-treated the slave girl, and she ran away. So she's quite an innocent girl. So quite a nice, good girl, a good woman. The angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness on the way to Shur, a place called Shur, Shur, and he said, "Hagar, Sarai's slave girl, where have you come from and where are you going?" So even God is taking the higher social ground, saying she's still a slave girl, whereas we take even higher social ground with Jesus now, saying there should have been a divorce and a remarrying if that's the way they decided it. They didn't have faith in what God said at the beginning, but it seems that God is doing a narrative with them, so that means it's different for us now who don't talk to God, or not as much as they did. The angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness on the way to Shur, and he said, "Hagar, Sarai's slave girl, where have you come from, and where are you going?" She answered, "I am running away from Sarai, my mistress." The angel of the Lord said to her, "Go back to your mistress and submit to her ill treatment." The angel also said, "I will make your descendants too many to be counted." And the angel of the Lord said to her, "You are with child and will bear a son. You shall name him Ishmael, because the Lord has heard of your ill treatment. He shall be a man like the wild ass, his hand against every man, and every man's hand against him, and he shall live at odds with all his kinsmen." So it's a curse, really. So God is saying that this should never have happened. they should have had faith in God from the beginning. But it's quite disappointing, and perhaps that would change after Jesus. So when Jesus was sent by God, God changed the world. And in fact, later on, after Jesus came back to life from death, after all our pain, we killed him as a human race. Not everybody, some good people, stood back in aghast, but they couldn't stop it. It was too great an act, Jesus dying and then coming back to life, and then that power that one human being sent by God showed to all humanity, other human beings for the rest of the world, changed the world forever. So we got an even higher level where this would be sorted out, and Ishmael wouldn't be badly treated. So verse 13, she called the Lord who was speaking to her by the name El Roi, and there are different names for God that are less sort of powerful. So El Roi there'll be a meaning to it. If I look there's a note at the bottom that is God of a vision. So she had a vision of God. For she said, I have indeed seen God and still live after that vision. That is why men call the well Bir Lahai Roi, well of living one of vision. The well of the living one of vision. So that's a well named after her, Hagar. It lies between Kadesh and Bered. Hagar bore Abram a son, and he named the child she bore him Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Ishmael. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, I am God Almighty. Live always in my presence and be perfect, so that I may set my covenant between myself and you and multiply your descendants. Abram threw himself down on his face, and God spoke with him and said, I make this covenant, and I make it with you. You shall be the father of a host of nations. Your name shall no longer be Abram, your name shall be Abraham, for I make you father of a host of nations. I will make you exceedingly fruitful. I will make nations out of you. Fruitful is an old word for producing good things, whether that be, not just family, but, what we would call now a business, but they'll call that an industry of some sort, an agricultural, a way of living, an occupation, you might call it, and at a high level we call it a profession. That's very successful, fruitful. So many, like fruit on a tree, and many good things from one organisation. I'll make nations out of you. So extraordinary fruitful. And kings shall spring from you. I will fulfill at the moment he's just a lesser, a king like in England in the time before the medieval time, between sort of Roman time and medieval time. We call it Dark Ages, but it's the time where there's many small kings. Probably right up into the medieval ages, there were many small kings actually. So it's a bit like that. And he's one of them. I will fulfill my covenant between myself and you and your descendants after you, generation after generation, an everlasting covenant. A covenant is a formal agreement between you and God. A covenant to be your God, yours and your descendants after you. As an everlasting possession, I will give you and your descendants after you the land in which you are now aliens, foreigners, all the land of Canaan, and I will be God to your descendants. So this is why people on all these three religions look to Abraham as the beginning leader. For Christians and Jews and Muslims, and it's not so much a physical leader, like God is agreeing with him, but a spiritual leader, which means inner feelings and emotions, and what we call the spirit of the world that actually is stronger than us. It's stronger than us because it's making us do what we do. When you say, have you got any spirit when you're playing a game of football, which I love, it's, have you got any enthusiasm to do the game? You know, how quick are you? You know, how quick thinking are you? You know, how, you know, but that's different to your knowledge. Do you know the game, how to play the game? Spirit is how quick are you? And that's what this is all about, religion. A lot of people will say it's unfair on Muslims because they'll say that Ishmael is the father of Muslims, but that's not what they would say. They would say that from Ishmael they may be, but they became a good people. And I would say it's maybe not true that they came from Ishmael physically. You know, some say, I think in a country in on the internet, that they are, but you know, some of them. But all of these three religions don't see it as a racial thing, as a physical thing anymore. They just see it as a thing of your thinking and your spirit and your enthusiasm, you know, in education. The main thing is that actually it's the you know, all three religions to be peaceful between one another. We have taken the best from these words and made it ours, not the worst. So these curses that it says in the Bible that God put on Ishmael, you know, they would delete that. Obviously, they wouldn't put that in a book that's a good book for their own benefit. So where that came from, you know, the important thing, I thought of the important thing before, now I can't remember it, so I apologise for that. But basically, the power behind it is that, yeah, the Christian thing behind it, and we look to Jesus as Christians, is what is the better thing, what is the higher thing that God gave us that we believe in now, that leaders are not doing, and that is blessing all, like they had Cain and Abel, and we're saying that Abel is the good guy and Cain is the bad guy, but actually, if you look at it from Jesus' perspective, Cain is also the good guy in that he's a human that got cursed by accident, being jealous the same as Abel would have been. So it's just a coincidental accident. It's a coincidence. It's something that it could have been Abel just as much as Cain, but it happened to be Cain. So imagine Abel did the wrong thing. That's what Jesus would say, and that then after that curse, Abel tried very hard, as if he was Cain. Abel would have tried very hard and would have become craftsman, which is a real benefit to this earth thing on earth. It goes back to good and evil. What is a straight line? What is a wiggly line? And knowing what is a wiggly line to a straight line, as a craftsman would need. Again, like showing all the wiggly lines on this picture. And so we try as Christians to bring it all round together again, and not to be prejudiced against the Israel's neighbours, which is the Arabs. They're next door to Sinai Desert, Arabia. After Israel is the Sinai Desert, tiny peninsula, then the huge peninsula of Arabia, which is where Islam came from. So it's easy to compare my neighbours to your neighbours to the neighbours of Arabia and Israel, and saying we don't always understand each other because of how close we are together. We overlap and misunderstand each other because we're neighbours. So we're not neighbours from Europe, so we have easier knowledge about it all. We just look at it from afar and take what we want, and it's easier for us. So it's unfair on them. So I think we need to say, look, analyze it, re-look at it, and keep, on keeping on, as St. Paul would say. And I know Muslims in Turkey like St. Paul. They know that he kept thinking and kept trying, and he said, run the race of learning, and we'll all improve together. Thank you very much. God bless you, whatever language you call God, and have a lovely time today. Amen.